All right. Hello, friends. This is our practice test. No idea why it says this. Who knows? But anyway, we're going to do what it says. We're going to give the domain and the range. So let's refresh your memory because this is from a while ago. Domain is going to be left to right. Range is going to be bottom to top. This is going to be the x's. This is going to be the y's. So if you look at this diagram for domain, it goes forever to the left, it goes across, up, down, and then it stops here. So forever to the left, remember, is negative infinity, just like up is positive, down is negative, and right is positive. So it's mean negative infinity, which you can never get to, so you don't do an or equal to. You're doing domain, so it's an x. Then it stops here, which is at 1, 2, 3, 4 on the x-axis, but it actually touches that because that's filled in, so that is or equal to. The alligator mouth's always open to the right when you're doing domain and range. So range from the bottom, the lowest it goes is right here, which is a -2, and it actually touches that because there's a dot that goes down and hits -2. Now we're doing range, so that's going to be a y. And then this one does not go on forever up. It stops here, which is at 1, 2, 3. So it tops out at 3. Is the graph shown a function? Okay, that's going to require you to use the vertical line test. And if you buzzed through here with like a zillion billion infinite vertical lines, they only ever cross the graph in one spot. And so it passes the vertical line test. So it is a function. Make sure you watch for all those things on the quiz, like circle your answer, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to give away points by just skipping something. So here we're deciding if something is linear. Linear means plane x. It's just got a plane, Jane, x. No offense to Jane. So it can't be squared. It can't be any power. It can't be square rooted. It can't be in the bars for absolute value. It's just plain x, like mx plus b. So in this first one, it is plain x. It's just -2x plus 4. And so that is, yes, that is linear. In the second one, that's going to be a no because that x is squared. And so that is not linear. Now, whether it's linear or not, this next step means the same thing. Plug in the number that is given for every x. So here I'll have -2. I'll plug in the -1, and then I'll add 4. And then this goes back to your calculator and PEMDAS and negatives. So these become 2 plus 4, so 6. Here I have a 2. So I'm going to have 2 squared plus 7 times 2 minus 3. So 4 plus 14 is 18 minus 3 is 15. Now we're going to be finding the slope through the given points. Okay, so this is going to be where we utilize our slope formula. We'll be doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I feel like everyone knows the formula, but it gets tricky. What do you do if there's a 0? What do you if there's a lot of negatives? So it's definitely still tricky. Whenever it says show your work and simplify, you have to do that or not get vote credits. So go ahead and do that. We're going to decide whether the line rises, which means you have a positive slope, falls, meaning negative, horizontal meaning 0, and vertical meaning undefined. So we'll have to see how that all turns out. So here, if I do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, these turn to adding, and I get 10 over 0. That is not an answer. You have to simplify that and decide whether you think that's 0 or undefined. That is actually undefined because you can't divide by 0. If you try it on your calculator, it'll give you an error. So over here where it says slope, I can even abbreviate it, but I have to either put undefined or 0. 0 would be if I got something like 0 over 10. Don't leave it, because if you leave it like this, it makes me think you're not sure, and then you don't get that, get that extra point. Okay, so because it's undefined, that's going to be a vertical line. And remember, vertical lines only have x equals a number in their equation. In the second one, I'm still doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this one's tricky with all the negatives. 4 minus 2 is 2. The bottom becomes adding a positive. So it's over negative 2. That is also not a finalized answer. It says show your work and simplify. So in this case, that reduces down to be negative 1. If you're not great at that, you have to use your calculator for help. A lot of people left answers like this on the last test or quiz, or I think it was a quiz. So that would have lost a half point. You don't want to do that. So that reduces to be a negative 1. And I don't even really care that it's 1. I just care that it's negative because I got a negative value. It falls from left to right, down 1 over 1. In the next section, I'm still using that formula, y2 minus y1 and so on, to decide if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Keeping in mind that parallel means they're going to have the same m. Here, it's going to be opposite in sign, and it's going to be the reciprocal, which is flipped over. So let's just look and see. So for line 1, I'm taking y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I get 3 over, this changes to adding, and again, I reduce it. So I can't really decide anything. I need to see what the other one is and then compare them. So on the bottom one, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now be careful, the top turns into negative 4. You're at negative 2 and you're subtracting 2 more. The bottom is 7 minus 5, which is a regular 2. And again, simplify. And so here I am. Now, keep in mind that negative 2 is really negative 2 over 1. So if you think of it that way, it's a little bit easier to see that these are opposite because one's positive and one's negative, and they are flipped over, 1 over 2 and 2 over 1. So those two have opposite reciprocal slopes, so I would circle perpendicular. Now on your answer line, you're going to be putting your reduced slope value for the first line and our simplified slope value for the second. Because they're opposite reciprocals, I circled perpendicular. Speaking of perpendicular, 8 says, what is the slope of a line perpendicular to this one? Well, the first thing you need to do is know where to look for your slope. This is in y equals mx plus b form, making this m, making that the slope. Perpendicular, it doesn't say parallel. If it said parallel, I would use negative 2/3 because that would make them parallel. But I need the opposite, so I need a positive, and I need it flipped over. So instead of 2 over 3, I need 3 over 2. So this one's going to be the one that makes them perpendicular, so I'll put D on the answer line. Okay, so this is slope-intercept form. We're going to do some graphing now. And this one is y equals mx plus b. And so this is my y-intercept. It's where I start on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, positive 3. That's where I'm going to start. Now here, my slope in front of the x is a negative 1. So I will go down because it's negative 1 over 1. Because basically negative 1 is over 1. Every whole number is over 1. So from that y-intercept of 3, I go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And when I'm looking to score your graphing, I am going to be looking for some precise points and a decent line, which will actually be pretty easy to do because you have a note card. Use it as a straight edge. Some of you change these into slope-intercept form. I think it's easier when it's in standard form to do the little zeros table. So if I put a 0 in for x, this part would disappear, and I'd be solving what remains. So I would just be dividing by negative 4, giving me a positive 2. Then when I go to try to find the other intercept, I'm going to go ahead and put the 0 in for y. 0 times negative 4 disappears, so I'm left with 2x equals negative 8. To solve for x, I divide out the 2, and x is going to have an intercept of negative 4. So I look, this first point is 0, 2, and my second point is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, and then I would just connect those two, and then I would go ahead and get that right. Now, if you change that, if you don't do it that way and you change it into slope-intercept form, you're going to see that you end up in the exact same spot. I guess I'll do that fast. So say that I wanted to do that. I wanted to move this over onto the other side. Now I have negative 4y equals negative 2x minus 8 that was there already. I divide every single piece by negative 4. And so I end up with y equals negative 2 over negative 4. The negatives cancel and it reduces to a half. Negative 8 over negative 4 turns into plus 2. So I would start at 2, go up 1 over 2. And so in the end, this is the same as what I got. I personally just find it easier to do the intercepts when it's in standard form. And then this one's just your big brain. This one is you going, wait, I don't get it. If it doesn't have both letters, it doesn't cross both axes. So y goes with horizontal, and it's only going to be 0 slope. X goes with vertical, and that's going to have undefined slope. It tells you what axes will be crossed, and it tells you where. So at 2, it only crosses the x, meaning it's never going to cross the y, so it has to be parallel to it, and it's going to look like that. Let's pretend that it was like, I don't know, y equals 4. Well, then it's only going to cross, that's going to be horizontal from my kind of brain notes or my note card notes. I'm going to say, okay, that's horizontal. It's only crossing the y at 1, 2, 3, 4. And for it to only cross the y means it never crosses the x. So it is going to have to be parallel to the x and be horizontal. So you got to notice that this is going to be a vertical and graph accordingly. Or if, this is the if, it was a y equals 4, then you would go ahead and graph a horizontal line. All right, let's do the back. Equation of the line. Okay, this is from that yellow chart. We need to find the m. So 6 minus 3 over 2 minus negative 1. So slow down and be careful with that. This turns into adding. I get a slope of 1. Now, I can choose either point to use. So I like to choose the one that's not going to have the negatives. This is my x and my y. So I put the 6 in for y. I found an m value of 1. And then I'm putting the 2 in for x. I always multiply these together. In this case, they stay 2 because you're multiplying it by 1. And then I take that 2 away or whatever number that is. So I'm ending up with a b value of 4 and an m value of 1. So my equation will be y equals 1x plus 4. You don't really have to write the 1. You could just write it as y equals x plus 4. But if you're like better at visually representing it and thinking, okay, I got a 1 up here, so I'm going to write it in, certainly not wrong. Write an equation line that passes through here. So here's my x and y, and is parallel, so that's telling you to use the same slope to this one. Well, when I'm looking at this, this is slope-intercept form. So the slope of this line is 3. I'm going to go ahead and use that. Let's pretend it was perpendicular. Then I would have to use the opposite reciprocal, which I'd flip the 3 over and change the sign. But that's pretend. It's not real. This one actually says parallel to. So again, off the yellow chart, I start with my y equals the m that I need to be parallel to that other line. I never use this. And then x plus b. Wait, sorry. It's actually going to be a b because I don't know what it is yet. But the 4 that I just, okay, sorry. I had a little brain fart. So my slope, my x plus b. Then always, 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 you multiply these two and subtract it. So 10 minus 12 gives me a b value of negative 2. The slope value I need to use is 3. So the equation of the line would be 3x minus 2. Okay, they want this one in slope-intercept form. So I need to get the standard form into slope-intercept form. So I need to move the 5x over. So I'm going to subtract that over. Now I have negative 4y equals negative 5x minus the 12 that was already there. And I'm dividing by negative 4 to get rid of that. So the y will be alone. So my answer is going to have just y because the 4's and the negatives cancel. Here, the negative 5 over the negative 4, the negatives cancel. So I get that. So my slope would actually be a positive, like up 5 over 4. And then here as well, negative 12 divided by a negative 4 will give me a positive 3. So this is the same line as the one they gave me initially. It's just that this one's in slope-intercept form and the other was in standard. It's always the same. You move the x like I did the 5x and then divide by the y number. Okay, so this next one is about a word problem. It says Pete's Plow Service charges $270 startup fee and $85 per plow. Per plowing service is telling me that that is my slope. This is my startup fee, so that is my B value. So I have my M value and my B value. So when it says to write a linear equation that models the situation, I'm just going to go ahead and write what I know. And you can use whatever variable you want. Y equals the slope, which is 85 times x, and then plus the 270. It says describe specifically what the y represents. Well, in this situation, I'm at $270 plus 85 per plow. So y is going to be the total cost of however many plows. So I guess I would write like total cost of the plowing. And then specifically, what does the x represent? Well, whatever 85 is 85 per plowing. So that's going to be the number of times plowed. So if it never ever snows, I still got to pay the $270 startup fee. But then after that, I would be off the hook. If it snows every single day, I got to pay $85 a day, and I'll be really crabby. Okay. Now I have an equation, I'm going to use it. Pete plows your yard, that should probably be driveway, 21 times during the winter. What will the total cost be? So it's asking me for y. When it says to show your setup and your work, do that, because that means points are associated with it. So the cost is going to equal, in this case, 85 times 21 plows plus 270. That's what I mean for setup, because you're probably going to just do that on your calculator. But show what you did, and that way if you get it wrong, you don't lose all the credit, and I am going to be giving you part credit for showing that so I can see what you're doing. Since it's asking for total cost, I'm going to label it with a $sign, and that is the number I'm getting. If you are billed 1205, so that is actually the outcome, that is actually the y. How many times did Pete plow the driveway? I'm going to circle this, so I'm going to go back and change that on the Word doc. Okay, so I'm going to end with 1205. I'm going to have 85 per plow plus my 270 startup fee. But what I'm trying to figure out is how many plows that is. So basically solve for x. So 1205, and I'm subtracting that 270, like that startup fee. And that is telling me that I don't really have any room. 935 equals 85x. So I'll divide by 85, and that should tell me how many times that they had to plow. So here it was 11 plows before I had that bill. Okay, so x and y vary directly. As soon as you see that, you know that y equals a times x. We're supposed to write an equation, and then we're supposed to plug in a y value of negative 18. So I'm going to put, they always give me an example. So I put the negative 10 in for y, and then the 4 in for x. This is like that day that I kept saying, you worked 3 hours and made $30. You worked 3 hours and made $30. Your brain very quickly goes, oh, that's $10 an hour. Because what you're really saying is, if you have 30 in the end, what is your rate of pay for 3 hours? And you're dividing to get that. It's just that your brain does it really fast. This one, your brain doesn't do as fast because it sounds like more gibberish. So you would divide that, and you can do it whatever you want. If you want to leave that as a decimal, that's fine. But this is the constant of variation, and that's negative 2.5. That is not your answer. It wants an equation. So what you're doing is you're taking this generic equation and you're rewriting it with your A value in place. And now you use that to find whatever they give you. And in this case, not always, but in this case, they gave you that the 18 goes, the negative 18 goes in for y, which is always kind of tricky because we're so used to plugging things in for x. So to find x, which is what it's asking for, I'm going to divide out that negative 2.5 from the 18, the negative 18, and I get 7.2. Tell whether each equation represents direct variation. So you need the y to equal a times x. To find that a value, if you can't see it with your eyeballs, you would end up having to like think about it this way and say, well, if there's a constant of variation, the y divided by the x has to be the same number all the time. So in this one, I need to get the y alone, and I do that by adding the 5. So I get y equals 10x plus 5. But that is not a direct variation because your b value equals 5, not 0. And it has to go through 0, 0, and that one wouldn't. It would start at 5. Now in the table, I'm going to be utilizing this fun fact, and I'm going to think, okay, 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. And 4 divided by negative 1 is negative 4. So since all of the y's divided by their x's are the same value, then that is direct variation. And your a value is going to equal whatever those divided out to be each time. Sorry, my phone is on, so I'm turning it up. Okay, so then now, last but not least, is my scatter plot. It is given to me because I think it might take too much time to actually draw one. It shows test scored paired with the number of hours they studied. What type of correlation, so this is talking about that R value, do they share? So if you look at it and you were going to be like doing your line of best fit, you might be, oops, I always draw with the highlighter. You would be going like that-ish. It doesn't have to be perfect to see that that is going up from left to right. And so it has a positive R. Negative R would be coming down from left to right, and none would be totally random. So it's certainly not random, and it is going up from left to right, so then I'm going to have an A for my answer. What is the best estimate? We're always estimating using these same values. Positive 1, negative half, positive half, 0. 0 means totally random, so you're going to pick 0 if the dots are literally everywhere and there's not a line of best fit. In this problem, I'm leaning towards 1 because it says best estimate. 0.5 means it's pretty spread out, and these really are not. I mean, you have a cluster here and here. These are really close together, and they're all pretty close to the line. That one and that one are the same distance. So these three are the only ones that are not super close to the line. And so if I'm estimating, it's certainly closer to being linear than not. What score would you predict for someone who studied 12 hours? Okay, so hours are across the bottom, and 12 would be like right around here. So I'm going to go up there, and then that's going to take me over. Oh, my dog is going to bark a lot. And then she's going to make all the other dogs bark. So I'm looking for a number that's just a little bit under 80. 75 is right here, so that can't be it. 80 is above there, so that can't be it. 70 is way down here, so that can't be it. And 85 is way up here. So the only logical choice is 78, so C. And which of the following could be the best fit line? You do not have to do math to figure this out, you guys. You don't have to calculate anything. You have to use your big brain. You have to ask yourself some questions. Keep in mind your B value is going to be where it crosses the Y. So if this is my Y-axis over here, does it cross the Y-axis as you go down here, this line of best fit at 90? Heck no. How about negative 70? Heck no. So the only one that makes sense, I should say the only two that make sense, are the ones that have 70 as the crossing point. So then how do you choose? Well, you look at the M. The M is related to your coefficient, your correlation coefficient. So I have line that is going up, so I need that to be positive. So in my remaining two choices, only one of them is positive because this has a negative slope and the line would be coming down from left to right. So I'm using my knowledge and the bits and pieces. I didn't have to calculate that it was 5/7. I didn't have to calculate anything. I just had to kind of use logic and a process of elimination to do that. So if there's any part of this that you don't feel confident about, review it, practice it, put it onto your note card so that you feel ready to rock it out, because this is going to be super similar to what you see on the assessment Friday. See ya.